The great warship drifted through space like a metal mountain. Its hull was black as the void between stars, covered with scars from 1,000 battles. Inside the command center, Admiral Zexthor stood before a wall of glowing screens. His forearms moved across the controls while his large yellow eyes studied the data flowing past him. The Kethvar had ruled the galaxy for over 2,000 years. They had conquered 312 star systems. Their empire stretched from the core worlds to the outer rim. Every species they met had two choices: join them or die. Most chose to join. "Admiral," said his second in command, Commander Velkash. "The scout ships have returned from the Sol system." Zexthor turned his massive head toward the younger officer. Like all Kethvar, the Admiral was 8 feet tall with gray skin that looked like stone. His people had evolved on a world with heavy gravity and dangerous predators. They were natural warriors built for conquest. "What did they find?" Zexthor asked. Velkash activated a hologram in the center of the room. A small blue and green planet appeared, spinning slowly in the air. The third planet from their sun. The natives call it Earth. Population approximately 8 billion. The Admiral walked around the hologram, studying it from all angles. "What about their technology?" "Primitive, sir. They have barely achieved faster than light travel. Their fastest ships can only reach 1/10 of our speed. Their weapons are mostly kinetic projectiles and basic energy beams. No quantum shields or plasma cannons." Zexthor smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "What about their military?" "Divided into many small groups. They fight among themselves constantly. The scouts counted over 200 separate nations on the planet. They spend more time fighting each other than building defenses." This was even better than the Admiral had hoped. The last 3 conquests had been disappointing. The silicon-based creatures on Kepler 442b had surrendered before the first shot was fired. The aquatic species near the galactic rim had given up after losing just 2 cities. Where was the challenge? Where was the glory? "Any unusual technology?" Zexthor asked. "Weapons we should be concerned about?" Velkash shook his head. "Nothing significant. They have nuclear weapons, but the yields are small. Their largest bomb is only 50 megatons. Our shields can absorb hits 100 times stronger." The Admiral laughed, a sound like grinding metal. 50 megatons? Our scout ships carry more firepower than that." "Yes, sir. The analysis team believes total conquest should take no more than 3 standard days." 3 days. That was actually longer than usual. The bird-like creatures on Rigel 7 had surrendered in 18 hours. The peaceful farmers of Wolf 359 had given up after seeing just 1 Kethvar warship. "Show me their military assets," Zexthor commanded. The hologram changed to show Earth's orbital defenses. A few dozen space stations floated around the planet like toys. Their weapons looked crude and simple compared to Kethvar technology. "They have approximately 40 orbital platforms," Velkash reported. "Each one carries between 10 and 50 missile launchers, primitive guidance systems, no energy shields. Ground forces? Several million soldiers across all nations, but they use chemical propellant weapons and metal armor. Nothing that could penetrate our battlesuits." Zexthor nodded. This would be just another easy victory to add to his record. The War Council would be pleased. The Emperor himself might take notice. "There is one interesting detail," Velkash added. "The humans seem unusually violent." "Violent how?" "Their entertainment media shows constant warfare. Their history is one long chain of conflicts. In the last century alone, they fought 2 global wars that killed over 100 million of their own kind." The Admiral waved a dismissive hand. "Primitive barbarism. Once they see real military power, they will submit like all the others." But Velkash looked uncomfortable. "Sir, there are some strange reports from the scouts. They observed human soldiers in combat zones who continued fighting even after being severely wounded. Some kept firing their weapons while bleeding to death. Desperation, Zexthor said. When facing extinction, even prey animals fight back. Perhaps, sir, but the psychological profiles are unusual. Most species show clear submission behaviors when overwhelmed. The humans seemed to become more aggressive instead. The Admiral studied the hologram again. Earth looked so small and peaceful from this distance. Blue oceans, white clouds, green continents. It reminded him of dozens of other worlds he had conquered. None of them had ever presented a real challenge. How many ships should we send? Velkash asked. Zexthor considered this carefully. The standard conquest fleet consisted of 50 warships, supported by troop transports and supply vessels. It had never failed. The usual number. 50 ships should be more than enough for one primitive planet. Yes, sir. When do we launch? Immediately. I want to reach Earth within 10 standard days. The sooner we finish this conquest, the sooner we can move on to more important targets. As Velkash left to prepare the fleet, Zexthor remained alone with the hologram. He zoomed in on Earth's surface, watching the day and night cycle creep across the continents. Somewhere down there, 8 billion humans were going about their daily lives. They had no idea that their world was about to change forever. The Admiral had conquered 47 worlds in his career. He had seen every type of resistance imaginable. Some species tried to hide, others attempted to negotiate. A few fought back with everything they had, but in the end, they all submitted to the superior power of the Kethvar Empire. Earth would be no different. In 3 days, it would be just another conquered world in his long list of victories. The humans would learn what every other species had learned. Resistance was futile against the might of the hegemony. Zexthor turned off the hologram and walked toward his private quarters. He needed to prepare for the journey ahead. It would be good to stretch his fleet's legs again, even against such weak opposition. He never imagined that he was about to make the biggest mistake in Kethvar history. The Kethvar fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. 50 massive warships hung in the darkness like sleeping giants. Each vessel was 3 kilometers long and armed with enough firepower to level a continent. Admiral Zexthor stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Earth appear on the main screen as a tiny blue dot. All ships report ready, Admiral, Commander Velkash announced. Begin standard approach. Send the surrender demand on all frequencies. The message went out in dozens of languages, transmitted by the most powerful communication array in the galaxy. The words were always the same, refined through thousands of conquests. Attention, inhabitants of the third planet. This is Admiral Zexthor of the Kethvar hegemony. Your world is now under our protection. You have 1 solar rotation to surrender unconditionally. Lay down your weapons. Disable your military installations. Prepare for integration into the hegemony. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your civilization. This is your only warning. Zexthor expected the usual response. First would come silence as the primitives tried to understand what was happening. Then frantic communications between their leaders. Finally, desperate pleas for mercy or attempts at negotiation. It always followed the same pattern. But something strange happened instead. The response came back in less than 10 minutes. Not from one source, but from hundreds of locations across the planet. Every major city, every military base, every space station broadcast the same message at exactly the same time. This is Earth. We have received your ultimatum. Our answer is no. We will not surrender. We will not submit. We will fight you with everything we have. Come and take our world if you can. The bridge fell silent. In 2,000 years of conquest, no species had ever responded with such immediate defiance. Zexthor stared at the communications display, reading the message again. Sir, Velkash said quietly, there's more. We're detecting massive mobilization across the entire planet. The tactical display lit up with activity. Orbital platforms were powering up weapons. Military bases were launching aircraft. Naval vessels were moving to defensive positions. But most shocking of all, civilian facilities were being converted to weapons manufacturing at an incredible speed. How are they coordinating this? Zexthor demanded. They have over 200 nations. They should be arguing about who's in charge. Unknown, sir, but every single government appears to be working together. We're intercepting communications that suggest they formed some kind of unified command structure in less than 6 hours. This was impossible. The Kethvar intelligence files showed that humans spent most of their time fighting each other. They had wars over territory, resources, religion, and politics. Some conflicts had lasted for decades. How could they unite so quickly against an external threat? "Show me their orbital defenses," the Admiral ordered. The screen displayed Earth's defensive satellites and space stations, but something was wrong with the image. There were more platforms than the scouts had reported, much more. "Belkash, how many orbital weapons platforms are you counting?" The younger officer checked his instruments twice before answering. 237, sir. That's 5 times more than we detected during reconnaissance." "Impossible. Where did they come from?" "Analysis suggests they've been hidden behind asteroids and debris fields. Some appear to have been built inside hollowed-out rocks. Very clever camouflage." Zexthor felt the first stirring of unease. No primitive species had ever shown such tactical thinking. They were supposed to be divided and unprepared, not unified, and waiting in ambush. "Begin the attack," he commanded. "Target their orbital defenses first." The Kethvar fleet moved forward in perfect formation. Energy beams lanced out from their weapons, striking the nearest human platforms. The results were satisfying. 3 satellites exploded in brilliant flashes. But the human response was unlike anything the Admiral had ever seen. Instead of retreating or sending surrender messages, every remaining platform opened fire at once. Hundreds of missiles streaked toward the Kethvar ships. The projectiles were crude by galactic standards, but there were so many of them, they looked like a swarm of angry insects. "Shields holding," reported the weapons officer. "Their missiles can't penetrate our defenses." But then something unprecedented happened. Several human platforms suddenly accelerated toward the Kethvar fleet. They were using their orbital stations as giant missiles, ramming them directly into the alien warships. "Evasive maneuvers," Zexthor shouted. The massive Kethvar vessels tried to dodge, but they were not built for quick movements. 2 platforms struck cruisers on the fleet's left flank. The impacts didn't destroy the ships, but they caused significant damage. "Sir," Belkash called out, "we're receiving transmissions from the platforms that just rammed us. The crews are still alive and they're laughing." "Laughing?" "Yes, sir. And using very crude language to insult our ancestry." This made no sense. The humans in those platforms were certainly going to die. Their life support was failing and they had no escape pods. Yet they seemed pleased with their situation. "Target their planet's surface," Zexthor ordered. "Hit their major cities. That will end their resistance quickly." Energy beams powerful enough to level mountains struck New York, London, Beijing, and Moscow. But instead of panic and surrender, the planet's response grew even more fierce. Every remaining military installation fired everything they had. Civilian spacecraft, cargo haulers, passenger shuttles, even personal recreational vehicles were launched toward the Kethvar fleet with weapons hastily welded to their hulls. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "we're intercepting broadcasts from their planet's surface. The cities we attacked are still operational. They've moved their command centers underground." "What about casualties?" "Minimal, sir. Somehow they evacuated the target zones before our strikes hit." This was getting worse by the minute. The humans had predicted where the attacks would come and prepared accordingly. They were thinking several steps ahead, something primitive species were not supposed to be capable of. "Sir," Belkash said urgently, "long-range sensors are detecting ships approaching from the outer system, multiple contacts moving fast." The tactical display updated to show dozens of human vessels emerging from behind Jupiter's moons. They were small compared to Kethvar warships, but they moved with aggressive purpose. "How many?" Zexthor asked. 80. No, 90 contacts. "Sir, there are more coming from the asteroid belt. And the Martian colonies are launching everything. They have." The Admiral stared at the display in growing disbelief. The humans had ships hidden throughout their entire solar system. This wasn't random panic. It was a coordinated defense plan that must have taken years to prepare. But how could they have known the Kethvar were coming? "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a message from the human fleet. Put it on speakers." A human voice filled the bridge, speaking in accented but clear Galactic Standard. HFY vessels, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Defense Force. You came here expecting an easy victory. You thought we were divided and weak. You were wrong. We've been watching you conquer other worlds for decades. We've been preparing. Now you're going to learn what humans do to bullies. The transmission ended and the human fleet opened fire. 3 weeks had passed since the battle began. Admiral Zexthor stood in his private chambers staring at casualty reports that made no sense. The HFY had lost 12 ships. 12 ships against a primitive planet that should have surrendered in 3 days. The door chimed and Commander Velkash entered. His gray skin looked pale, and his forearms trembled slightly. Admiral, the interrogation teams have finished with the latest prisoners. What did they learn? Velkash hesitated. Sir, I think you need to see this for yourself. They walked through the corridors of the massive warship to the detention levels. The HFY had captured 43 humans during various raids on Earth's outer defenses. Standard procedure was to break a few prisoners quickly to gather intelligence about enemy weaknesses. But nothing about this war was standard. They stopped outside Interrogation Room 7. Through the observation window, Zexthor could see a human female strapped to a neural probe chair. The device was designed to cause intense pain while extracting information from a subject's mind. No species had ever resisted it for more than a few hours. This human had been in the chair for 6 days. Turn on the audio, Zexthor ordered. The interrogator's voice filled the room. Tell us about your defensive plans for the Mars colonies. The human woman lifted her head and smiled. Blood ran down her face from the neural probes, but her eyes were bright and defiant. Go kiss a black hole, you ugly rock-faced piece of garbage. The interrogator increased the pain settings. The woman's body convulsed, but she started laughing. Actually laughing while being tortured. Your turn to talk, Stonehead, she gasped, between fits of laughter. What's it like knowing that your mighty empire is getting beaten by a bunch of primates? Zexthor turned away from the window. How long has she been doing this? Since we captured her, sir. She hasn't revealed a single piece of useful information. Instead, she keeps asking about our weaknesses and making jokes about our appearance. This was madness. Every other species broke under torture. They begged for mercy, offered information, tried to negotiate. This human was treating the whole experience like some kind of game. What about the others? Similar results, sir. Prisoner number 12 has been singing songs for 3 days straight. Prisoner number 21 keeps trying to convert our interrogators to something called Christianity. And prisoner number 7, what about him? He's been giving our psychological evaluation team detailed instructions on how to improve their torture techniques. Zexthor felt his stomach twist. Show me the combat footage from yesterday's engagement. They moved to the tactical center, where holographic displays showed recent battles in 3 dimensions. Velkash activated a recording from the fighting near Luna. This is from the assault on their moon base, he explained. The image showed HFY, soldiers in powered armor advancing through a human facility. Their weapons could punch through tank armor. Their shields could stop artillery shells. They were the finest warriors in the galaxy, but the humans they faced were not acting like any enemy the HFY had ever encountered. A human soldier with a severe leg wound was dragging an unconscious comrade toward safety. When HFY troops opened fire, the wounded man threw himself on top of his friend to shield him from the energy beams. He died instantly, but kept moving for several seconds, still trying to protect the other human even after his heart had stopped. Impossible, Zexthor muttered. What drives them to do this? The scene shifted to show human medics running across an active battlefield. They were completely unarmed, marked with red crosses, and heading straight toward the heaviest fighting. When one medic was shot down, 2 others immediately broke cover to rescue both him and the soldier he had been trying to save. Sir, Velkash said quietly, our psychological analysis teams have studied captured human media. They believe this behavior is normal for their species. Normal? Yes, sir. They have thousands of documented cases of humans risking their lives to save complete strangers. They call it heroism, and they teach their children to admire it. The Admiral watched as more scenes played out. Human pilots flying damaged fighters directly into Kethvar ships, rather than ejecting to safety. Human engineers staying at their posts to keep shield generators running even as the facilities collapsed around them. Human civilians taking up military weapons despite having no training whatsoever. But the most disturbing footage came from the occupied territories. "This is from City 7 on their European continent," Velkash explained. "We conquered it on day 4. The recording showed Kethvar soldiers patrolling empty streets. They had expected the usual post-conquest scenario, sullen civilians going about their daily business under alien rule while their leaders negotiated terms of surrender. Instead, the humans had vanished. "Where did they go?" Zexthor asked. "Underground, sir. They had prepared tunnel systems under every major city. But that's not the strange part." The scene shifted to show a Kethvar patrol being attacked by human fighters who seemed to appear from nowhere. They used crude weapons, chemical explosives, kinetic rifles, even simple blades. But they struck with surgical precision and disappeared before reinforcements could arrive. "How many resistance cells have we identified?" "That's the problem, sir. We can't get an accurate count. Every time we eliminate one group, 2 more appear. They're using communication methods we can't intercept and coordination tactics we don't understand." The Admiral studied the tactical readouts. "What communication methods?" "Unknown, sir. Our best theory is that they're using some kind of quantum entanglement network, but that technology should be beyond their capabilities." Zexthor reviewed more combat reports. The pattern was always the same. Humans fought with desperate intensity when cornered. They protected their wounded at great personal cost. They never seemed to calculate odds the way rational beings should. "Velkash, pull up the psychological profiles of other species we've conquered." Data flowed across the screens. The pattern was clear. Every successful conquest had followed the same formula. Demonstrate overwhelming force. Target key population centers. Wait for the inevitable surrender when civilian casualties mounted. But humans were different. Civilian casualties seemed to make them fight harder, not weaker. "Sir," Velkash said hesitantly, "I've been reviewing their historical data. I think I understand why they behave this way." "Explain." "Their planet is a death world, sir. For millions of years, everything on Earth has been trying to kill them. Predators, diseases, natural disasters, climate changes, even other humans. They evolved in a state of constant warfare. The Admiral considered this. Many species evolve under harsh conditions. Not like this, sir. Most harsh worlds produce species that hide or run from danger. Earth produced a species that fights back. They've been in an arms race with their entire planet for their entire evolutionary history." Zexthor looked at the reports again. "What are you suggesting?" "I think Earth didn't just create another species, sir. I think it created a weapon. Every challenge their planet threw at them made them more dangerous. Every disaster taught them new ways to survive and fight back. They're not just defending their home. They're doing what they were born to do." The Admiral stared at the tactical displays showing human forces regrouping for another assault. 3 weeks into what should have been a 3-day conquest. The humans were not weakening, they were adapting. And for the first time in his long military career, Zexthor wondered if the Kethvar had made a terrible mistake. 2 months had turned into 6 months. Admiral Zexthor stood before the War Council's holographic projection, his 4 hands clasped behind his back. The faces of the hegemony's highest commanders stared at him from across the galaxy, their expressions growing darker with each word of his report. "Explain to me again," High Commander Morthak said slowly, "how a primitive species has destroyed 18 of our warships." "They are not primitive, sir," Zexthor replied. "Our intelligence was completely wrong." 18 ships, another council member repeated, "against a species that barely has faster-than-light travel." The Admiral activated his tactical display. "They don't fight like any species we've encountered. Watch this." The hologram showed recent battle footage. A human destroyer, badly damaged and leaking atmosphere, was surrounded by 3 Kethvar cruisers. Standard tactics demanded the human ship surrender or attempt to escape. Instead, it accelerated directly toward the largest cruiser while broadcasting a message. "For Earth and freedom, you alien bastards." The ship struck the Kethvar vessel at full speed. Both ships exploded in a brilliant flash. The human crew of 300 had sacrificed themselves to destroy a Kethvar cruiser carrying 2,000 soldiers. "Suicide attacks, High Commander," Morthak said with disgust. "The last resort of desperate cowards." "No, sir," Zexthor said. "That's what we thought at first, but this wasn't desperation. It was calculated strategy." He showed another recording. This time, a human fleet commander was giving orders to his ships during a losing battle. "Phoenix Squadron, initiate ramming. Protocol: Tiger Squadron, cover their approach. Eagle Squadron, prepare to follow up." The humans had turned suicide attacks into organized tactics. They coordinated them like any other military maneuver, with backup plans and support units. "They have names for these maneuvers," Zexthor continued. "They practice them. They volunteer for them. The humans call it going down swinging." The War Council members exchanged uneasy glances. In 2,000 years of conquest, no species had ever weaponized their own death so effectively. "What about their technology?" Morthak asked. "Surely they can't match our weapons." Zexthor hesitated. This was the part that would sound impossible. "Sir, they're adapting our technology faster than we can deploy it." "Explain." "Every weapon they capture, they reverse engineer within weeks. But they don't just copy it, they improve it. Their scientists work around the clock in shifts. They share information instantly across their entire planet. And they're combining our technology with their own in ways that shouldn't be possible." The display showed a human fighter that had been recovered from the battlefield. Its hull was Kethvar, armor plating welded to a human frame. Its weapons were modified Kethvar energy cannons powered by crude human fusion reactors. The result was a ship that was neither fully human nor fully Kethvar, but somehow more effective than either. "They're like scavengers," Zexthor explained. "They take pieces from everything and build something new. Their engineers don't follow standard rules. They try things that our scientists say are impossible." "And they work?" "More often than they should, sir." High Commander Morthak leaned forward. "Admiral, you're describing a species that defies everything we know about technological development." "Yes, sir. I believe their chaotic development process is actually an advantage. While we perfect one approach over centuries, they try dozens of different approaches in months." The War Council was silent for a long moment. Finally, Morthak spoke again. "What about their coordination? They have over 200 nations. Surely they're experiencing internal conflicts." Zexthor laughed bitterly. "Sir, they've done something unprecedented. Every human government has completely subordinated itself to something they call the United Earth Defense Force. Former enemies are working together as if they've been allies for centuries." He showed intelligence reports from Earth's surface. Russian engineers were working alongside American scientists. Chinese manufacturers were producing weapons designed by European researchers. African miners were extracting materials for Japanese factories. Middle Eastern oil producers were fueling ships built in South American shipyards. "How is this possible?" a council member asked. "We've analyzed their communications, sir. They seem to have a concept they call species survival. When faced with extinction, every other consideration becomes secondary. Their individual nations matter less than the survival of humanity as a whole." "That's insane. Every species has internal competition." "Not humans, sir. Not when they're threatened by outsiders. We've accidentally triggered something in their psychology that overrides everything else." Zexthor activated another display showing human industrial capacity. "In 6 months, they've tripled their shipbuilding capability. They've converted civilian facilities to weapons manufacturing. They're building ships in caves, underwater facilities, even inside asteroids." The numbers were staggering. Earth was producing new vessels faster than the Kethvar could destroy them. Worse, each new ship was more advanced than the last. "Sir," Zexthor continued, "they're not just defending anymore. 3 weeks ago, human ships began appearing in neighboring star systems. They're evacuating other species that might be threatened by our expansion. Evacuating them to where? Unknown, sir. But we've lost contact with our garrisons in the Tau Ceti and Wolf 359 systems. When our relief fleets arrived, they found empty stations and this message. The hologram displayed a simple text transmission. The Terran Defense Coalition has liberated this system. Any Kethvar vessels attempting to return will be destroyed. Consider this a warning. High Commander Morthak's face turned pale. They're expanding beyond their home system? Yes, sir. And they're getting help. Species we conquered decades ago are joining them. The humans seem to inspire something in other races that we've never seen before. What do you mean? Hope, sir. They're showing conquered species that the Kethvar can be defeated. Resistance movements are forming throughout the Outer Rim territories. The War Council erupted in angry voices. This was beyond anything they had imagined. The humans weren't just resisting conquest. They were actively undermining the entire hegemony. Admiral, Morthak said when order was restored, what is your assessment of the situation? Zexthor took a deep breath. What he was about to say would end his career, but he had to speak the truth. Sir, I believe we have awakened something that should have been left alone. The humans call their planet Earth, but I think that's wrong. I think Earth is not their home. I think it's their forge. Explain. For millions of years, their planet has been testing them. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, supervolcanoes, plagues, predators, and constant warfare among themselves. Every challenge made them stronger. Every disaster taught them new ways to survive. Zexthor paused, gathering his courage for the final assessment. Sir, we didn't find a primitive species on Earth. We found a weapon that took 4 billion years to make. And now that weapon is fully awakened and pointed at us. The silence that followed was the most terrifying sound Admiral Zexthor had ever heard. 1 year after the first shot was fired, Admiral Zexthor stood on his bridge watching the impossible. Human ships filled the space around Earth like a swarm of metal insects. Where once there had been 40 orbital platforms, now there were thousands of vessels. Some were sleek warships that looked like they belonged in a science fiction dream. Others were crude but deadly craft welded together from scrap metal and alien technology. The worst part was how quiet they were. No transmissions, no demands for surrender. They simply waited in perfect formation like predators watching wounded prey. Sir, Commander Velkash reported, his voice barely above a whisper. Long-range sensors detect human fleets in 17 star systems. 17? Zexthor couldn't hide his shock. How is that possible? They're not just building ships, sir. They're building shipyards, mobile construction facilities that can travel to new systems and start production immediately. Some of our former colonies are now manufacturing human vessels. The tactical display updated to show the scope of human expansion. Red dots marked Kethvar territories that had gone silent. Blue dots showed confirmed human presence. There were far too many blue dots. What about the core worlds? Zexthor asked. Velkash hesitated. Sir, the High Command has ordered all Outer Rim fleets to return immediately for home defense. Home defense. The words hit Zexthor like a physical blow. In 2,000 years of conquest, the Kethvar had never needed to defend their home systems. They were the hunters, not the hunted. Admiral, the communications officer called out, "We're receiving a transmission from the human fleet. Put it through." The main screen flickered and showed a human female in a crisp military uniform. She appeared to be standing on the bridge of a ship that gleamed with advanced technology. Behind her, Zexthor could see crew members representing dozens of different species working side by side. Admiral Zexthor, the human said calmly, I am Fleet Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Coalition. I believe we've met before. It was the same human who had taunted him during the first battle, but she looked different now, more confident, more dangerous, and the ships behind her looked nothing like the primitive vessels he had first encountered. We've come to discuss terms, Admiral Chen continued. Terms of surrender? Zexthor asked, hopefully. Admiral Chen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Your surrender, yes. The bridge fell silent. A human was demanding the surrender of a Kethvar fleet. It was like a mouse demanding that a cat lay down and submit. "You must be joking," Zexthor said. "Admiral, you've been away from home for a year. Perhaps you haven't heard the news from your core systems." The main screen split to show footage from across Kethvar space. Human ships emerging from hyperspace above the hegemony's oldest colonies. Orbital bombardments reducing military installations to glowing craters. Kethvar civilians fleeing in panic as resistance fighters armed with human weapons stormed government buildings. "This footage is 3 days old," Admiral Chen explained. "By now we control 47 of your former territories. Your slaves are free. Your administrators are either dead or in prison. Your military bases are scrap metal." Zexthor stared at the images in horror. These were worlds the Kethvar had held for centuries. Fortress systems with massive defense. Fleets, how could they have fallen so quickly? "Impossible," he whispered. "Admiral, your empire made one critical mistake. You thought conquest was about superior technology and overwhelming force. But humans learned something different during our long history. We learned that real strength comes from having something worth fighting for." The screen showed more footage. Alien species that had been enslaved for generations were now fighting alongside human marines. They moved with the same desperate intensity that had first shocked the Kethvar forces at Earth. "Every species you conquered still remembered freedom," Admiral Chen continued. "They were just waiting for someone to show them it was possible. We gave them weapons, training, and most importantly, hope. You're terrorists," Zexthor spat. "You're destroying the order we've built. We're liberators, and we're very good at it." The tactical display updated again. This time it showed the human fleet around Earth moving into attack formation. But they weren't targeting the Kethvar ships. They were forming up for departure. "Where are you going?" Zexthor demanded. "Your capital system. We've received a very polite invitation from the Kethvar High Command." The Admiral's blood turned to ice. "What invitation?" Admiral Chen held up a message crystal. "They want to negotiate a complete ceasefire. It seems they're somewhat concerned about the million-ship human fleet currently 3 days out from their homeworld." "Million ships?" Velkash gasped. "Construction never stops, Admiral. While you've been here playing war games with our home defense fleet, we've been very busy. Humans are excellent at multitasking." The screen showed industrial footage from dozens of systems. Massive shipyards working around the clock. Assembly lines producing fighters by the thousand. Entire moons being converted into weapons manufacturing facilities. "You see," Admiral Chen explained, "you made a fundamental error in judgment. You thought Earth was our home. But Earth was never our destination, it was our starting point. You didn't attack our world. You attacked our nursery." Zexthor felt his legs go weak. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that everything you observed about humans was just the beginning. Our violence, our stubbornness, our refusal to quit, those aren't our weaknesses. They're our features. Earth spent 4 billion years making us into the perfect galactic pest. And now, thanks to you, we have access to faster-than-light travel." The human fleet began moving. Not toward the Kethvar ships, but toward the edge of the system. They were leaving for the hegemony's core worlds. "Admiral Chen," Zexthor called out desperately, "what happens to my fleet?" The human turned back to face him. "You're free to go, Admiral. Return to whatever's left of your empire. Tell them what you learned here." "And what did I learn?" "That some weapons should never be awakened. That some sleeping giants should be left alone. That when you point a gun at someone's home, you better make sure you can pull the trigger." The transmission ended. Within hours, the human fleet was gone, vanishing into hyperspace toward the heart of Kethvar civilization. Admiral Zexthor stood alone on his bridge, surrounded by the wreckage of his career and his empire. In 1 year, humanity had transformed from a primitive species into a galactic superpower. They had freed slaves, toppled governments, and turned the entire galaxy's balance of power upside down. And it had all started because the Kethvar had threatened their home. He activated his communications array and sent a final message to any Kethvar vessels that might still be listening. "This is Admiral Zexthor. Do not engage human forces. Repeat, do not engage. We are no longer the hunters. Run while you still can." As his battered fleet limped away from Earth, Zexthor realized the bitter truth. They had come looking for another easy conquest. Instead, they had awakened the most dangerous species in the galaxy and taught them how to leave their home system. Kethvar hegemony was finished, and humanity's real expansion was just beginning.